Coming. It looks like we have a full house, and I'm so glad that so many of you were able to join us tonight. My name is Sam Trusso. I'm the Ward 6 councillor. I am not going to give a long speech. I just want to begin by saying that we have Sergeant Anderson from the London Police Department. He's in charge of the traffic division, and he'll be able to answer questions about the work of London Police. Doug McRae is and I want to make sure I get your exact title right, but Doug McRae is in charge, department head, division head of traffic engineering for the City of London. So ultimately, anything that has to do with traffic in the City of London goes to Doug or his staff, and if it's a police matter for traffic, it goes to Sergeant Anderson. Finally, not finally, but we have Dr. Colin Evans here on the side. Dr. Evans is an emergency, he's in the emergency trauma unit at LSCH, and he's also very, very prolific and dedicated cycling advocate. And he's going to talk about the relationship between trauma and safety and health. And finally, Zygmunt Gorski has been working as a traffic engineer, accident reconstruction specialist, private consultant on all things having to do with traffic and traffic safety for 40 years here in Southwest Ontario. And I was very, very happy when he said he would be willing to join us tonight. So I also want to acknowledge the presence of several members of the fire department here and there and back. And Deputy Chief, would you just say hello and introduce your staff?
Yeah, so my name's Gary Bridge. I'm the Deputy Chief for the London Fire Department and lead up your community hall. And I call it a community hall because that's what we're here to serve, your community. So pleasure to be here tonight, and always welcome to drop by anytime.
Okay, so I think with that, I'm going to get started. I've asked Sergeant Anderson if he would start. And we're going to leave a lot of time for questions. There's some water back there. There's a restroom here, and there's another restroom all the way in back. So, Sergeant Anderson?
Hello everybody, my name is Mike Anderson and I am the acting staff sergeant with the road safety section. Some people may know it as the traffic unit. We've switched to the road safety section. So I'm new there as of March of this year. Before, you probably have known maybe Sergeant Ozzie Nethersall. He was there for many years dealing with many of the traffic concerns. I don't have any formal presentation today, sort of here more of a Q&A to try to help out with any issues that you guys see in the neighborhood. I will tell you, at least with our unit, we have 4 teams, 3 to 4 members per team that we're working that specifically just deal with traffic issues. So when an issue is brought forward from the community, I would assign it to one of the members within my unit. They would then start investigating it. There's many different things we can do, whether it's enforcement, whether it's getting additional data, things like that. And I know your counselors reached out a few different times to me about a few of the issues, specifically about a collision that happened at Colbert and St. James, where the crossing guard was injured, as well as some speed, some cut-through issues, things like that. I can give you a little bit of data. At least I know one of the issues that may be spoken about here is the St. James and Colbert intersection specifically. So we have a data recorder device that we can put essentially on a telephone pole near a road that will collect data of how many vehicles are going through, speed of vehicles, to try to get us information like that. So typically when members of a community bring up an issue saying, hey, there's a bunch of speeding going on in our neighborhood, we want some additional enforcement. Before we just send numerous cruisers out there, we try to get some more data. So we have done that. So we had it out there for 11 days. That ended about a week ago. So say 2 weeks ago it started or so. So in 2 weeks, it was collecting vehicles going north-south on Colburn. The number of vehicles that passed through for those 11 days was 43,711 vehicles. And the average speed was 44.1 kilometers an hour. So just over the posted 40 kilometer an hour speed limit. I believe most of the speed they identified was an issue was between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. at night from the data that we've so far collected. And on one occasion, actually on July 9th, it was the max speed, one of the vehicles obviously going far too fast for the neighborhood, but there was one vehicle that got clocked at 91 kilometers an hour on that street on that day. So that was the highest. So those are sort of things that we have implemented. We just started putting those out there to try to get some data for us. Obviously we share data with the city shares data with us, and we try to work together to see what we can do to obviously make intersections, communities safer. So that's why we're here, to sort of get your input, see what we can do. And if you have any ideas, we're more than open to ideas. We're here to obviously learn and share. So that's about all for myself.
Thank you. I just said, I'm going to give each of the four speakers a chance to give a brief overview, and we'll take questions after they all have the chance to speak. And we do have time, lots of time for questions, and there's also a sheet that you can write questions down on, and you can contact any of us as well. But hopefully we can get through a lot of these this evening. Next up is Doug McRae.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes.
Can I just suggest that we turn off the projector? Can we switch the projector off? Yeah, thanks. Sorry. Could you turn the projector? Oh.
Sarah's taking care of it. So, yes, I'm responsible for transportation and mobility at the City of London. We have sort of, from the big picture, citywide perspective, we've been working for over 3 years on a mobility master plan. So this is a citywide periodic planning exercise that we go through, and actually just last night, Council approved the plan. So that's good news. The report is on the city's website. We're going to be posting a notice of completion and soliciting, encouraging residents to read the plan and give us feedback that'll help us form the implementation. But so you're the first to know. So it's been a lot of consultation, a lot of public meetings, meeting with organizations, everyone interested in this topic. Transportation planning in general. But one of the common feedback themes that we heard frequently was public safety and road safety. And so based on that, we identified an action in the MMP, the Mobility Master Plan. And the action is to create a safe mobility action plan. So what that would be is it's essentially an update to the London Road Safety Strategy. London Road Safety Strategy was created about a decade ago, so it's been some time, certainly time for an update. There was some pretty good progress made with reductions in the amount of people getting injured and killed on our streets after that plan. Numerous factors involved, but there was good progress, and I was feeling good about that. Since the pandemic, I think the trend is going the wrong way, which is concerning, and it's another reason for us to create this safe mobility action plan. So we work with our partners on the London Middlesex Road Safety Committee. So that's a committee that we work. The police are on it. The LHSC, the hospital, is on it. The Ministry of Transportation's on it, Middlesex County is on it, STS, the My Big Yellow Bus folks are on it, so and others. So it's a pretty diverse group that brings a variety of perspectives, and that committee has been in place for probably 15 years. And it was a useful forum. It was really a team effort that created the previous plan. So we're going to utilize that committee has been reinvigorated recently, so it will be the team that creates the safe mobility action plan. So that's an action, and it's one of the first ones coming out of the MMP that we're going to act on. Staff are already queuing that up, so that's coming soon. We have heard recently a lot of concerns from Old North, particularly recently, but also going back several years. So we thought with the recent concerns, how do we best respond and scrutinize and come up with a suitable response? We initially thought that why don't we add a component, a component to the Safe Mobility Action Plan that specifically focuses on Old North. But in the end, we decided to undertake a separate study. So what we're currently scoping out, and I'm here to listen to your feedback tonight. I got my laptop so I can take notes. But what we're currently me and my team currently envisioning is the creation of a comprehensive plan for Old North, so a traffic management plan that responds to the concerns specific in Old North. This would occur at the same time as the Safe Mobility Action Plan, because that's got to happen. It's important. But this Old North study is equally as important, and that'll enable it to. It'll probably finish before the citywide plan, and it'll provide specific recommendations for Old North, but it also might provide policy changes that we can apply around the city as well. So what this Old North traffic management plan, what we currently envision is sort of two primary focuses. One is traffic speeds and volumes on the streets in Old North, and so that's looking at the streets, what the traffic volumes are, what the speeds are, the data that we have, going out and getting additional data, and also hearing from the residents of Old North for your sense of what goes on in the streets. So that's the one component, and then the second component is the traffic control at the intersections. All-way stops, two-way stops, comparing, scrutinizing the provincial criteria that we follow to implement these controls, seeing what's working, what's not. So I think there's comparisons that we can make, both within Old North, across the city. So that'll be the two primary focuses. It's really responding to the concerns that we're hearing from the neighborhood. And then we would come with a plan to the community, get your feedback. Depending on the nature of it, some of the actions might be things that would happen immediately. Other things might, if there are significant infrastructure changes, they might happen in time along with infrastructure projects. So that's towards the end of the study. We would figure out the implementation plan once the plan is created, but it would be created with your input and feedback. And hopefully we land in a good spot. So that's hot off the press. I don't have formal slides. It's just something my team and I have just come up with in response to the concerns we're getting from the neighborhood, and trying to respond in an appropriate manner. So thank you, and I'm here for questions.
Thank you, and that's very good news. I'm really glad you were able to tell us that tonight. I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions about how this is going to be implemented and how people can participate on it at their block and neighborhood level. So next I'm going to hand the mic to Dr.
Can you hear me? Yep. Hi, everyone. I can't stand in one spot quite as effectively as these guys can. I get pretty restless. So my name is Dr. Evans. I'm Colin Evans is my name. Dr. It is none. Okay, we'll do it that way. I was saying my name is Colin Evans. Is that better? I'm an emergency physician here in the city. I'm also a trauma team leader. Those are fairly new appointments for me. I've just finished my residency training, where I spent the past 5 years working at LHSC and St. Joe's, training to provide care for injured and sick adults and pediatrics. And in particular, spent a lot of time dealing with people who've sustained injuries from trauma. It's a second career for me. Prior to that, I served London Middlesex as a paramedic for 12 years. And so I've been engaged in serving this community and people who are injured in this community since 2005. Concurrent with that, I've spent a lot of time doing injury prevention work. And I had a really great conversation with one of our neighbors the other day, who's a passionate advocate for vulnerable road user safety, who talked to me about, make sure I mention the 3 E's for responding and preventing injuries: the education, enforcement, and engineering controls. And for most of my career, I have had an orientation towards education and enforcement, teaching children to wear helmets and teaching drivers to behave appropriately behind the wheel of their car. And it hasn't worked really at all. Like, we get more kids wearing helmets and more cyclists wearing helmets, but that just means that when I see people, their brains are in a slightly better position to survive than their chests and their pelvis and their femurs are. It doesn't prevent the injury from happening in the first place. And it doesn't do a lick of good for people who are just walking down the street. And so this meeting tonight is really a response to, 2 significant incidents that happened a few weeks ago. One at the corner of St. James and Colborne, another one at the corner of Cheapside and Waterloo. In both cases, vehicles traveling around the average speed for our neighborhood were involved in a collision and left the roadway, placing vulnerable road users at risk. And if I take like a show of hands here, how many people will walk around or cycle or travel outside of a vehicle in this neighborhood? Okay. How many people have had near misses while traveling outside a vehicle in this neighborhood? How many people?
Frequency of the near misses.
Yeah.
Daily, weekly, daily.
Yeah.
Daily.
Yes, daily. Especially if you have to walk to the school during pickup and drop off, it's sort of like Mad Max Fury Road out there. Twice a day. So, I'm not auctioning anything off here, so good for you all. But it's something that's apparent for everybody who lives in this neighborhood, but it's apparent for everybody who lives in neighborhoods across the city. And the reason in my mind for that is that we've spent a lot of time emphasizing individual action. Don't be drunk when you drive a car. Don't drive too fast. Don't be distracted when you drive a car. Wear a helmet when you're on a bicycle. Be aware when you're walking down the street. Don't wear headphones. All these things that are focusing on the individuals involved. But all we've really managed to do is, like I said, maybe present a slightly better brain when they present to me in the emergency department, and make people feel ashamed when they're involved. Because we're also a lot of drivers who catch ourselves speeding or catch ourselves distracted or blow through an intersection by accident. And the reason for that is the 3rd E, the engineering. The way that our neighborhood is designed induces driver behavior. I live on Waterloo Street, and if I walk out in front of my house and look down, it looks like I'm living on the 402 because of the width of the lanes. And it's a straight shot. I used to love Waterloo Street when I was working downtown at Waterloo Station, because I was leaving the city. I would take it straight on up at the end of a night shift, all the way up to Kings, and then zip up Richmond Street, which is what a lot of people do because the neighborhood induces us to do it. It pushes us off the arterials because the arterial is so busy, and we get this quick rat run through the neighborhood, whether you're going north-south or you're going east-west on Regent or Huron. But your priority isn't getting through the neighborhood safely, it's getting through the neighborhood quickly. And so by virtue of the fact that we have a neighborhood that's designed to work around arterials and improve people's, commute times, we are inducing a hazard. And so when you look at the CDC, when they talk about hazard mitigation, at the top of the hierarchy of controls, the best thing you can do is eliminate it entirely. Below that somewhere is engineering, right? Engineering it so the people who are vulnerable to the hazard are protected from it. Below that is enforcement, and below that is personal protective equipment. And I've spent a lot of time on personal protective equipment, and I think I've wasted a lot of time on personal protective equipment. Where we really need to be emphasizing is on finding ways to eliminate that hazard as much as possible and engineer its behavior the rest of the time. And so I'm really very excited to hear what Doug said, because that's what I'm hoping to see, not just in Old North, but citywide, creating flow restrictions that lower both the volume of traffic and the speed of traffic in our neighborhoods, so that you don't maybe have to be worried about letting your kids walk to school, or going out for a walk with your dog, or being aware. Two of my girls are sitting up here, and all of my teaching these days is about how far back from the intersections they have to stop. So Blakely here knows that she stops behind a post, at least 20 feet back from where the sidewalk crosses over. Layton knows the same. They're masters of it, and they control their little sisters while we're out cycling on the sidewalks, because the roads aren't safe. But this is where I'm hoping the conversation will go, is an idea about how we can reduce the flow of traffic through the neighborhood and engineer ways to reduce the speed of it. And there are some barriers. These guys back here will know it makes it a little bit harder to get places in an emergency, because maybe we're putting chicanes in the middle of intersections, and we have to find ways to allow flow of emergency vehicles and buses through there while restricting the flow of cars. That's going to be part of the deal, I think. But my hope is that we can, at least as a group, come together around the idea of engineering ways that may involve some sacrifice, where maybe some of us really think 40 kilometers an hour is an appropriate speed, or 50 kilometers an hour is okay. But if you look at the CDC guidelines from 2009, they'll tell you that at 30 kilometers an hour, a vulnerable road user struck has a 9 in 10 chance of surviving. At 40 kilometers an hour, their chance of survival is 6 in 10. At 50 kilometers an hour, at 40 kilometers an hour, it is 4 in 10. So you go from 1 in 10 chance of dying to 4 in 10 chance of dying at 40. At 50, it's 6 in 10 chance. And at 60, which is a fairly common speed in our neighborhood, it's a 9 in 10 chance of dying if you get hit by a car at that speed. So while our council really tried to hedge a few years ago when the 30 kilometer an hour limit came up, that was a really evidence-based limit. And their choice decided that we're willing to permit people to die 4 times as often as they otherwise would in our neighborhoods. We've also, chosen to, in the way we talk about it, we'll say there was a collision, pedestrian was mortally injured, but speed wasn't a factor. Speed's always a factor. Speed and weight are the kinetic energy that goes into the bodies that I deal with when they come to me. It's just whether or not we care about that speed, whether or not we're willing to regulate it more tightly, that we choose to decide whether or not it's a factor or not. So if a vehicle's traveling 40 in a neighborhood and a person's critically injured, we'll say speed wasn't a factor because they were traveling the normal speed. But speed was a factor because we've chosen to let them travel that speed. So we have to be very reflective about what type of neighborhood we want to live in, because there is a clash of ideals. There are people who don't want their commute to be interrupted. There are people who want to have ready access to all areas of the city as rapidly as they can. But I don't think that fosters a good quality of life. I think it is an unnecessary burden on people who are outside of vehicles. And I think it makes life a lot more complicated as we expand our city. Whereas if we're willing to accept that traffic flow is not the #1 priority in our lives, and that we're willing to make sacrifices in order to improve the quality of life for everybody in the neighborhood and reduce the burden that's being borne by people outside vehicles, then I think we'll have a much safer and healthier community.
We're going to turn the overhead on because we have a slideshow. And I'd like to introduce Zygmunt Gorski.
Thank you. Thank you, Sam. I think I might come around to the front here.
By the way, there's water here.
Well, my name is Zig Gorski, and you probably have not heard of me, and I have not been kind of public in London for quite a long time. So I thought maybe before I discuss some of the technical stuff, that maybe I just introduce myself, because I'm kind of a dark horse here. So if you could just get the next one. I was born in Poland. I came to Canada when I was 5. I came to London when I was 5, and I've lived here since 1960, my whole life here. I've gone to school here, grade school, and attended university at Western. And I began my official employment with the University of Western Ontario Multidisciplinary Accident Research Team in 1980. So when I arrived in London, that's about the kind of view that I saw. Here is Dundas Street in 1959. That's, it was a thriving community all along Dundas, and that's unfortunately not what I'm experiencing these days, and some other neighborhoods are also maybe suffering a bit. Why psychology? Well, when I was in grade school, they renamed me Sigmund. And so Sigmund, what a name. No one in my class was named Sigmund. And strangely enough, I came across some guy named Sigmund, the only one I ever heard of, someone named Sigmund Freud. And he was the father of psychoanalysis. So you probably kind of got that about unconscious thoughts and all those sort of things that went on. So when I got a hold of Sigmund Freud, I went to the library and I saw 80 volumes of his work. And by the time I was in high school, I was reading a lot of his works. So there kind of developed this idea of the complexity of human behavior, complexity of human thoughts and unconscious things like this. The other thing that I came across early in my life was when I studied psychology at Western, I became introduced to this scientific method, having to deal with subjects, and I was an experimenter, trying to create a study which was unbiased. And I think that's important when I talk further, is that a study which is unbiased, that we can create something that is real and we can depend on the data. So here are those two things, that from psychoanalysis, the idea that humans are complex creatures and that we need to have some kind of unbiased research. So in my work starting in 1980 through to 1990 with the accident research team, I was not involved in any psychology. So, the first thing I did was I went out to look at an accident site. I looked at the vehicles involved. We were part of a Transport Canada study, so we were trying to find out how people were getting injured and killed and how we could prevent that. So I was going down, looking at 2 vehicles a day. There's been a fatality, and I'm looking at occupant contacts. I'm measuring those occupant contacts and taking photographs, and then trying to match the injuries to those contacts, and looking at collision severity as well. So really, when I started looking at accidents, and many researchers viewed this the same way, accident reconstruction or research in my field involved 3 basic factors: the human, the vehicle, and the environment. So the human, the driver maybe, the vehicle, what kind of vehicle you drive, and the environment being maybe the roadway. Those are complex factors. There's many factors involved in accident reconstruction. And we could go into big detail about that, but I'm not going to. I'm just simply saying that it's a complex thing, and you have to, every collision you look at will have probably some portion of that trio in there. And what I did early at the accident research team is I was involved in a lot of physical evidence documentation. And some of the things I was doing was looking at vehicles and how they were crushed and how people were getting killed as a result of that crush. And I was developing some ideas about certain patterns of collisions. That here we have 3 different head-on collisions, but they all have similar damage patterns, and we can learn from those damage patterns as to how that collision occurred. This is the type of thing that I was studying, is that physical evidence. And I was looking at the details of that physical evidence. Here we have something very simple. We have a bolt that scraped across the side of a vehicle, and we have the bolt going across from the right to the left. It's coming along, producing a gouge, and then it spins off, and you can see some of the edges of that bolt. That is the kind of detail that I was involved in, trying to figure out what that little piece of evidence, physical evidence, said about a collision. And I spent a lot of time doing that. So, my work also involved computer reconstruction. So even from day one, we had a program at Western that I was using, and this carried on for the 40 some odd years that I did reconstructions. Computer simulation and reconstruction were just part of my daily activity. So now coming into more modern times, what was I getting involved in? Well, in order to reconstruct a collision, it's very helpful to know how vehicles perform outside of that collision that you just did. Okay, someone was going fast, but does everyone go fast at this site? So there I started doing some video camera analysis. So I'd set up multiple video cameras at a site, and I document things about how fast vehicles were going, what they were doing. One of the interesting things I was looking at is vehicle loss of control. And I had a real interesting subject location here on Clark Road, which I studied. And, I would typically put markers on the road, as you can see, and you'll find that I did that at Colburn and St. James. I put markers down on the road, and I'd observe the motions of vehicles going through those markers. And here we have an example of a very big transport truck going on the wrong side of the road. Those are the kind of things that we had to monitor. Also in curves was that vehicles go off the asphalt edge, and over time they produce this edge drop-off. And that's not a good idea. People lose control once they get over that edge drop-off. And here, if we have a big truck going off the edge drop-off, you can imagine the possibilities of what could happen if there were other vehicles around and so on. So this is some of the stuff I was doing, for example, at Clark Road. But Clark Road was just one of many sites all over southern Ontario that I was working at, and including some sites here in London. The bottom line is, in recent years, I was really focused on this typical video procedure where I would have, in an intersection collision, I would have, these kind of cameras positioned, and I would document whatever needed to get documented. And so we come down to 2022, and at that time, the city was planning to put in a painted cycling lane. And, some residents were concerned that it was being painted and not a protected lane. I thought about this, and I thought, well, I'll bring my video cameras out there, and I'll do some research on that. So there are my video cameras, my tripods. This is looking south on Colburn, looking toward, in the background, the intersection with St. James. And as you will see, as usual, you can see my painted markers on the road surface, and another line over here, and then, of course, the video cameras here are pointing at those markers. Vehicles cross by the markers. I can tell things like vehicle speed, position, and so on. So that's the kind of thing that I was doing at that site a couple of years ago. And so I would have this video editing project. For example, over here I've got the main view showing a view looking north, and we see a cyclist in the background, we see a car in the foreground, and I'm looking at what is the lateral position of those units. And then I also have I would obviously have a number of other cameras that I would look at to get the details of what was going on. So this is typical of my work that I have done. Colburn and St. James is just typical, where I've examined other roadways like this. So once I got that done, I did some video before the cycling lane was completed and then after. And then I looked at things like, okay, we look at cyclists. And we look at light-duty vehicles. That would be cars, pickup trucks, and so on. And then transit buses, and then heavy-duty vehicles. And I'm trying to take a look at, well, what is the lateral position of those units before the lane got painted? And then what is the lateral position after it got painted? So we have there, we're using the junction between the concrete gutter and the pavement as the 0 point. So up there, if we look at cyclists, the average is 0.71, so that's 71 centimeters that the cyclist is traveling away from that junction. And you kind of work your way down and see what the difference is now between before and after. And probably you can just look at the overall average here maybe for all units before the cycling lane got put in, 0.94, and after, 0.57. To me, that's a good result. Because then when you look at specifically at cyclists and then these other units, what's happening is the cyclists are getting separated from the motor vehicles, okay, after the painted cycling lane was put in. So that's good. That's a good result from my study. I wish I could say it's a good result with every cycling facility in London. Unfortunately, it's not. And unfortunately, many cyclists don't realize the dangers that they're in because certain issues, for example, the curve I just talked about on Clark Road, wherever there's a curve, there's always an issue with safety because the driver cannot steer perfectly around a curve, and neither can a cyclist. And very often, whether you have a protected cycling lane or a painted cycling lane, sometimes it doesn't matter. You are in a curve and you're in greater danger. This is the kind of thing that drivers and cyclists need to know. They need to know where there is a potential for greater, collision possibility. And I can say curves are, but there are so many other issues, road surface conditions and things like that. And now we're just focusing on the road, but then of course I mentioned those three things, human, vehicle, and environment. There's also the human, and whether you're a driver or a cyclist, you're going to cause some issues, and the vehicle. The vehicle is also a factor in this. Sorry, you have your hand up.
I do. Just noticing that the dates, and also with the dates that the policeman mentioned, were not when school was in. And so, like, you did your before and after. The before is when school is in, and that's including, like, Western and Kings, because we have pass-through to going to Kings, to all of the elementary schools, and then we have people going south to Central and Beale and right the high schools. So you're going to get a different data set when school is in and school is out. So I see that the date is on August 29th for this one.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could please repeat that when school is in, and also the St. James and Colburn data was done in July. Would it be important to do it in September or October?
A very valid point. And the only thing is, I wasn't really interested in the safety of that intersection, or really what was going on in Old North. I was simply trying to document lateral positions of vehicles and cyclists and trying to see whether there was a change. But yes, that's a really, really valid point, the issue of season and how data changes in a season. We'll see some data in a second here where I did do work on September 30th in one session, and I did another one just recently, July. It's a huge difference in the data. So I'm just going to continue on just for a second here. So at that study, I also did some speed calculations, nothing to the size that the sergeant here has done, but nevertheless, we do have some speed calculations. This is a 40 kilometer per hour zone, and we have 40 being right about here, and all these vehicles to the right are going faster than 40. The sergeant mentioned someone doing 90 or something. Well, I have someone over here close to that, around 80 or so, and a couple of other ones, 75 and so on. So, yeah, so there are dangerous people out there. And this is, I'm just going to say right now, dangerous people are a real problem. The average driver is not our problem so much. Yeah, we will make mistakes. The real problem is that dangerous driver, that 5% or so, where he or she is going to ignore whatever is put on the road, and even enforcement. So from my experience, it is those very few that you really need to take a look at. Yes.
Sorry, I have to interrupt because I really disagree with you on that point. These intersections are designed for collisions. When you have a two-way instead of a four-way, the average driver will glide. I have to disagree. I'm sorry, I can't.
No, I'm not disagreeing with you on that point either. And we can talk about that. I'm simply going back to my study for a minute. And let me just continue on for a minute. Sorry, okay, here we go.
In all due respect, I respect your expertise, but I just think we're here to hear from the community, and I think it's time for you to wrap it up. And let's hear what the folks think. Okay, again, with all due respect. All right.
Well, I'm probably about 2 slides away from the end, so go ahead. Here's a list of conflicts that I identified. I have a website article at the back that you can grab and take a look at all this data. And then if you continue on, and here are some of the near misses. Here's one. This is looking, where is that? That's southbound. And next one, please. And then another one, similar situation going southbound. So there are conflicts there, okay? And just one more, please. So all I can say is some other things is that speed changes depending on the time of day. And some of my work has identified that the speed increases here from 5:30 till 6 in the evening. And the other 2 slides I'm just going to ignore because I'm taking up some time.
This is really important.
I'm sorry.
Just.
Well, okay, we'll continue. All right, then let's get that other slide. Some other things I took a look at was eastbound and westbound vehicles. This was after I finished my study, and I understood that there was some concern from the community about what's going on and maybe vehicles passing through the intersection. So I'm looking now at vehicles on St. James and what they're doing. Basically, they are most of these vehicles are turning to go south or going straight. Nobody's going north on St. James, essentially. That's my finding from that. And then there are a lot of conflicts there, September 30th. But when I came back on July 11th, just a week or so ago, it was totally different. Not enough motor vehicles at the site, both going down Colburn and going down St. James. It was essentially dead, you know. There were no conflicts. So, you know, that participant over there talked about season, and that is very important about data. It's not only the time of day that you need to think about, and it's not only the day of the week that you need to think about, but it's also the season. This data from July is a lazy day in July where no vehicles were around. Yet, on September 30th, 2 years ago, there were many traffic conflicts. So my comment here is that whatever data you're presented with, and someone tells you that, you know, this is not important and so on, I would say, wait a minute, just think about this for a moment. Make sure that you understand where that data came from. Like I mentioned, season, day of the week, and so on. Make sure you understand where that data comes from because it changes greatly. My final comment is that what I've observed is that there is not enough data sharing amongst you. And I've observed that in many neighborhoods. People are calling and complaining, or they think that there's a problem with their roadway. But what data do you have? Honestly, you look at Old North here. Do any of you have really detailed data about what's going on in Old North? I suggest not. What you need is some detailed studies, and those studies need to be revealed to you, and that you understand them, and then you can make a determination of what needs to be done. Unfortunately, you know, your group here, as well as in many in London and everywhere, you residents are not getting the data that you should be getting. And you should be able to access that data, look at it, understand it. And something like this, you need to have access to really know what's going on. Okay, that's it. And sorry, there's one question?
Yes, sir. My name's Valerie, and earlier last year it was pointed out that a variety of Facebook posters were commenting on specifically the intersection at the Regent Street Speedway and the Wellington Speedway. And our counselor recommended that somebody do a petition to garner support for a study to be done, because most of us don't have like a speed limit. I'd be happy to sit in the curb and determine how fast people are plowing through our neighborhood and then plowing through that particular intersection. So when that was done, and then people come back to me and say, so what happened with that study? It's sitting on somebody's desk at City Hall, and I appreciate that you guys are all here tonight and that each of you brings your respective expertise. But when you say we need somebody checking on that, well, back in February, I begged for it. And people are going slower in the winter. Now I invite you to sit across the street with me and watch people blasting through it at 70 kilometers an hour. Sorry, I sound hysterical. I'm waiting for a child to die in our neighborhood. And I get the studies.
Before I go to the general audience, I do have one specific question for you, and I want to give you the opportunity if you want to. Do you have any particular recommendation regarding two-way stops in grid neighborhoods where it's predominantly four-way stops? And you've studied Colborne St. James. What, in your professional opinion, do you think we should do there, if you can?
Well, I think one of the issues in this intersection, and probably several others at Old North, is the issue that there are many four-way stops and some two-way stops. And that's clearly what's happening in that photo there where someone thought it was a two-way or a four-way and they almost collided. So my recommendation here is that we look at those differences. Where do we have the two ways? Where do we have the four ways? And are we confusing some drivers? So we need to look at that. So yeah, that.
And Sam, they're driving so fast, they can't tell whether it's.
So how many people in the room have filed or worked on a petition or signed a petition regarding a four-way stop in Old North? Okay, let me just tell me, just shout out the intersection. Tell me the intersection. Okay, yours? Yours? Okay, yours?
St. James and Colburn.
St. James and Colburn?
St. James and William.
St. James and William?
We have one in process for St. James in Richmond. We need to get all the children going to school to St. George on that side across Richmond, but we're not hearing progress on that.
Okay, what are the other intersections? Yes. Region and Wellington, yes.
The setback at Maitland and Region is horrible, but you can't see their setback, they're stopping 20 feet back from the intersection.
Yes, that's been, yes.
It's terrible.
Other two-way stops, I just want to get these all on the table. St. James and Maitland.
St. James and William.
St. James and William.
St. George and Regent.
St. George and Regent.
St. James and Waterloo.
St. George and Grosvenor.
St. James and Elmer.
I was rollerblading about 2 years ago, and I didn't even realize there wasn't forward stop.
So
I'm rollerblading through, and I almost got hit.
So my understanding is then there are several petitions that are currently pending, and I guess my question, if you could answer this, what is the general approach when you get a petition? How long does it take? And what's the chances of getting the relief that's requested in the petition? And how will this new study that you're doing assist with that?
Yeah, Valerie, so to answer your question, so I forget if Sam forwarded the petitions recently to me or if I got them from you directly, but I got them, yeah, I got them just recently, but I checked with my team. They said they got them. And the studies were done April, May timeframe, and they were in the process of getting back to you. I said, well, just hold off because I want to hear what the whole neighborhood has to say. But so we do our best, and if there's a petition received, we do certainly do a study, and we share the data back. So there is data coming on that one. So I just want to assure you that the team did do a study as requested, and the way that we're thinking, that I'm thinking, and open to your feedback tonight, is instead of doing it piecemeal, specific, so I'm trying to record all those intersections that were being rhymed off, but particularly with the speed piece. So we want to compile the data across the entire neighborhood instead of doing it piecemeal, and see what makes sense for the entire neighborhood, and that probably will help us develop better solutions. So that's my vision for this plan that I discussed. So.
Okay, so I think at this point, I would like to go to the audience and take general questions and comments. Before I do that, I want to acknowledge the presence of several members of the fire department, which I've done, and I'm just wondering if you have any, not to put you on the spot, but if you have any comments or...
No, thanks, what a pleasure. I guess from our perspective, from a fire department perspective, we looked at this, whether right now it's our response is coming out of the chute is what we're looking at there. And whether there's a four-way stop put up or whether there is traffic lights put up there, we're willing to accommodate whatever's required in this community, but it's important that we get an access coming out of there. We've never had an issue to this point. Sometimes it's backed up when we go southbound, especially in the morning at the lights there. But I tell you, the community in this area is always, when the lights go on, is always peeled out. And we can always use the opposite way.
Okay, yes, and if you don't mind, if you could say your first name and just generally where you live, that would be great.
Brian. So how many pedestrians?
Microphone. Yeah, she's
Stand up. Last year, how many pedestrians were killed in traffic accidents? Last year, how many pedestrians?
That'll take me a minute. I don't know that off the top of my head.
I've been asked to say it again. Last year, how many pedestrians were killed in traffic accidents?
He's looking that up. You need a few minutes? Because I can ask another question.
Yeah, give me a minute. I did get this
It's gonna take a
stat.
minute. Yes, sir.
So my name is Quentin Lang, and I live at the corner, or I live on Maitland Street. 2 years ago, the traffic in our neighborhood changed because they removed the pork chop islands at Oxford and Adelaide, and the Adelaide Street underpass opened. So as a result, there's a large number of vehicles that are now turning right onto St. James. They come down, they don't go down William Street because they can look down it and see the traffic calming measures. The curbs stick out. They're at the end of it, there's a street light and whatever, and they come on to Maitland Street. And so the traffic has increased and the speed has increased. And because of the changed nature of the vehicle pool that we have, cars slow down for speed bumps. SUVs do not. They just continue on, and so with trucks. So the speed has increased. So that's an example of traffic calming that works and traffic calming that does not work. Speed bumps do not work. And all they do is cause an awful lot of noise in my house. But putting out curb extensions and putting in street furniture that interferes with people having a direct line of sight to where they want to go does decrease speed. And I think that's probably the most important thing we can do in this neighborhood, is change the street architecture to slow traffic down.
So sorry, for the question there about fatal pedestrian collisions, in 2024 there was 4 pedestrians that were struck and killed, 1 cyclist, and 7 were involving vehicle-to-vehicle collisions that caused a death.
Is that the whole city? Or?
Yeah, that's for all of London. That's not Old North specifically.
Okay, over here.
I'm David Beach. I do not live in Old North, but I do travel by bicycle through Old North very frequently. And what I have found is, for cycling, oftentimes I have to ride out close to the middle of the roads. The reason being, glass, shrapnel, debris left in the gutter, branches. I had a branch once break part of my bike. All kinds of things, great big chunks of asphalt missing in the roads. Cyclists can't ride on that. It doesn't matter what road I was on, pretty much all of them. And I was after the city, year after year after year. Get your street cleaners out. There's glass on the roads. Remove it. Remove the debris. Remove debris from collisions. I don't know who's supposed to remove the debris from car collisions. I've been after that for collisions all over the city. Do they? No. It's swept, sometimes it's swept off into the cycling lanes, sometimes it's just left there to pile up.
Yes.
Finally.
Hi, my name's Brian. I live on William Street. This is the 4th meeting of this kind I have been to in the last 25 years. Over that period of time, I think there are 3 things that happened. One thing at the bottom of William, and lots of lumps in the road, and little else. However, I also have the misfortune to have to go to Ottawa from time to time to visit my son in the Glebe. The Glebe is a perfect example of exactly our problem here and how to solve it. Getting in and out of the glebe is a huge pain in the ass. You cannot get in except with about 2 roads between, I don't know, the major highway and the far end in the south part of Ottawa. And it's bordered on both sides by Bank Street and Robson, okay? So it's very, very much like this area. Every single intersection has 4 stop signs. Believe you me, it works. They all slow down. 2 people roll through? Of course they do. We don't care about rolling through. We care about them going through at 60 kilometers an hour. Make it difficult to come through this area, A, and for God's sake, make a decision in favor of the people who live here, not in favor of the people who go through here.
Okay, so my name is Maggie and I live on Regent. Regent has seen, we do have 4-way stops. I live near Regent and Colburn. But there's traffic cutting through from Adelaide to Richmond, even with those 4-way stops, very quickly. And it has increased a great deal in the last 2 years. I mean, even in the last year, I would say. There's a lot of through traffic and it is not going at 40. And we do have a small traffic calming measure right at Regent and Colburn where it does sort of narrow. It's not making any difference. I mean, the traffic has increased this past year significantly. I would like to see what this gentleman at the end mentioned, or that had, and see a stop. I'd like to have more closed off streets. That would be my recommendation. I just like to make it really difficult for people to get through and not have just have 4-way intersections for sure everywhere, but also have more ended streets.
Martin?
Hey, I'm Martin. So I've lived at Cheapside and Waterloo for 21 years. Traffic certainly has changed in the neighborhood. My observation is that the little bump outs on Regent and so on, for some time and to some measure, they do make a difference, but they're not enough right now. And I'm just gonna, I guess, second or third a theme that I start hearing coming out. And I know in my professional capacity, I work on urban planning issues a little bit, and I've read some of the research that suggests when you have a residential neighborhood and a lot of people are cutting through, and I do think that's probably our biggest problem in terms of safety, is not, like, there'll be a few of us that drive badly in the neighborhood, but most of the accidents, most of the problems come from people who are trying to race through the neighborhood. So when you have a neighborhood where that's becoming a big issue, ultimately you just have to close the neighborhood off as much as possible to the possibility of people using it as a quick way to get through. So that means not just 4-way stop signs, but it means more 1-way streets. It means, less opportunity. We have a bit of that. But I think, and Doug, I'm really glad to hear that we're going to go down the road of a neighborhood-wide study, because I think you're right. It's not, the best way to do it isn't one stop sign at a time, is to look at the bigger picture, right? And I know that there's going to be barriers and challenges because emergency vehicles need to get through, there need to be bus routes and so on. But I think we need to move towards a neighborhood that just makes it a lot more difficult and a lot less attractive for people to cut through, because that's really the fundamental problem.
So I think this is a good opportunity to sort of summarize a little bit that, no matter where you are in this neighborhood, traffic is an issue, right? And it presents a hazard, a significant hazard, that it results in near misses every single day. We may have a relatively low mortality data, but we have a fairly high morbidity data from the people who are struck. So we have a lot of people whose lives are changed irreparably from injuries. And a lot of times when Blakely here steps off the curb and just by chance, that person making a left-hand turn without looking happens to stop or just go around her. And it's the near misses that I'm most concerned about, because that's what's going to dictate the future. And so what I'm hearing here is a fair amount of support for a system-wide approach to the entire neighborhood. And there are good examples of that internationally. Glebe is a good example of that. Things like what they call circulation plans, where someone like Doug and his team are looking at how traffic flows throughout the entire neighborhood and how to reduce the volume of traffic and the speed. And that can come through lots of different ways. If any of you travel westbound on Piccadilly from Waterloo, I'm guessing not many do, because there's a chicane at the end that makes you turn right up to Oxford Street. And you don't have any other choices. And those types of interventions that introduce forced behavior within a neighborhood are what is going to have an impact on volume of traffic. If you put chicanes in the middle of intersections that people cannot go straight through and they must make a turn, now you're creating barriers to flow through traffic, both speed and volume, but you are also creating a neighborhood where people can figure out, the people who live there are going to figure out how to navigate around them. The emergency services are going to figure out how to get through them. And we can even introduce things like filtered permeability, which are opportunities for things like buses and emergency vehicles to get through, but nobody else. Those...
Not spoken before we go back people who have spoken. So if I'm not calling on you, I'm trying to clear through the hands that people have not spoken. So.
Thanks. Hi. Yeah. I'm Melissa. I live on Victoria Street, but I call it student side. And I'm a cyclist too. And I think I noticed when you said that there are, what was it, 40-some thousand cars that passed in 11 days. The room went, whoa, there's a lot of cars. And so I think what I'm wondering is what the various groups and organizations in the city are doing to just reduce traffic volume in general, not just in the neighborhood, but to make it so that cycling is a more viable option. I'm trying to go car-free, and it's extraordinarily hard to do. There's a lot of good things happening in the city with some of the bike lanes and some of the programs and all the organizations, Cycle Link, everything, but it's really hard. Transit is also hard to navigate. I think there's a hunger for people, among people, to do more cycling, to do more transit, to do alternatives to cars, but it's hard. I think some people find it too daunting to even try. So I'd love to see more support for that kind of thing, just in general. And I think it would be helpful in the neighborhood, but also in the neighborhood.
Thanks. I just wanted to piggyback on that. I'm Leanne. I'm at St. James and Colburn, and I also don't own a car. And I've been in the neighborhood for over 15 years. And one thing I often see when things like new transit routes or cycle lanes are brought up is quite a bit of opposition. And I'm not saying necessarily the people here, but there is some opposition in the neighborhood around if we have more buses, it'll reduce our home's value and things like that. And I wonder if we can start trying to maybe be a little bit more open-minded about not everyone needing to have a car, because I think reducing car volume on the street as well can help. So I just wanted to kind of piggyback on that.
Thank you. I know you're very close to the intersection of St.
Yeah, like 2 hours back. Over here. Right here.
Yeah, I see. Let me.
Hi, I'm Laura. My husband and I moved to this neighborhood almost 30 years ago. We've raised all 3 kids here. This is not the first time we've been in this situation. We attended the big forum at King's College, I don't know, somebody told me it was 2008. My kids were younger. And then there was consultation at the Lutheran Church, and there was a meeting somewhere else, and it amounted to nobody listened. And I'm sick of it. I got told that Colburn Street is a secondary artery and they will not be doing traffic calming measures on Colburn Street because they want traffic down our street. They want to come down Colburn, they want it to go down Cheapside because Richmond and Adelaide are too congested and they need to figure out a way to alleviate that problem. So that's why we have 43,000 cars coming through in 11 days. I don't like it. I moved to Old North because I actually grew up in Old North for a long time. And this is another point of contention for me is when you were talking about your transit hubs. at Richmond and Oxford. And the person from City Hall refused to acknowledge that Old North is its own neighborhood. It is one of the first subdivisions in this city. They kept calling us downtown. We are not downtown. We are families live here. Children go to school here. We want to have a happy, peaceful life, and watching people get in car accidents all the time at Cheapside and Colborne where I live, and having poor crossing guards getting taken out by automobiles because they're simply doing their job and somebody decided, I don't know if they stopped at the stop sign or not, I wasn't there, I know children who are waiting for their school bus to go to Pearson had to witness it. They got it from a stop sign. And I need to know what you guys are going to do about it. I understand you're going to do a plan and you're going to come up with a safety plan. But 18 years ago, we asked you to rectify the four-way stop issue in Old North. We asked you to implement consistency in the neighborhood with four-way stops everywhere, and we were told no. Why is it going to be any different this time?
On your study.
I'm Wendy. I don't know if you can hear me or not. Sorry, I'm Wendy. I live on Waterloo near Grosvenor Street, and I am concerned not only about the fast cars and everything, but I live close to St. Joe's Hospital, and that is a real congestion problem. When you go up there, there's a four-way stop, which is fine, but then there's taxis on that side. There's handicaps.
Can't hear you.
Handicap parking on that spot, on that side. And then there's a little painted line where people are supposed to cross but never do. And they really need one of those light things for people to cross because people are crossing all over the place. And it is a hazard just trying to drive up to Richmond Street slowly. So, you know, that is just a spot where I am really concerned because I want to go that way.
I'm gonna go to the back of the room. I'm probably okay without the mic. I'll give it a shot. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I'm Dan. I live at Cheapside in Maitland. And I have so many questions, but I'm gonna try and limit them. The gentleman from the police service, I think his comments today were probably amongst the most impactful. Not because they were the shortest, but because he presented us with data. There were some comments about how we don't have data, we should be doing petitions, but most of our day jobs don't focus on looking at traffic management in our neighborhood. So I'm not clear on what options I should suggest in terms of changing stop signs, in terms of filtered permeability, in terms of other aspects of urban planning. I'm a civil litigator by trade, so I see the aftermath of bad collisions on a daily basis. I have a rotating caseload of 100 files that the substance of which would perhaps, even shock the conscience of the good gentleman from the ER department, not that it's a competition. So my comment about the data, which I didn't plan on making tonight, but I'm curious to understand more. I believe the unit that obtained that data for over those 11 days, I've heard it referred to as an armadillo. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And so that study was done during the summer. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So I would like to understand from the experts at the front of the room what they can extrapolate from the 44,000 cars going down Colborne during the summer when school across the city, including the university and the college, are out. What would you expect the number of cars to be if in the off season it's 44,000 cars down Colborne, if all school is in session? And that's one question. I said I'd try and limit myself, but lawyers like to talk, sorry. The other question I have is, when the armadillo is not in use over those 11 days, is it stationed at another intersection somewhere else in the city, or is it over in storage and needs to be requested?
I can speak for the London Police. We have 2 armadillos that I have in my unit, and we have a running log. Obviously, there's complaints throughout the city about speed and lots of different issues. So we're trying to use them as much as possible. Essentially, they go out we try to do about 7 or 8 days when we get a speed complaint, and we have 2 throughout the city at different locations. They come in, we download the data. We have somebody, it's not myself, who goes through all the data, gets the sort of the stats, the speeds, determines whether it's an issue, but we are continuously using them throughout the city. Like, they're not really just sitting there. It's out again. Like, I have an Excel sheet with a running log of people who have obviously sent emails or complaints to the traffic unit, and then we're trying to determine whether or not speed is an issue or what we can do specifically, at least for the enforcement side of things.
Thank you. I was being facetious when I suggested it's in storage. How much does a unit cost, and how can the police service get more of them?
I don't know how much they cost, to be honest with you. So I know we have 2. That's all we have right now.
Easy on that budget, buddy.
Yeah, I know. But in terms of us bringing data forward, that was the most impactful data tonight. And if the community had the ability to request more armadillo studies, when there is a complaint, when there is a petition filed, then we would have data to present to City Hall to try and effect some change. But to come tonight and hear that there's a plan with an indeterminate length of time, it wasn't mentioned, I'm not sure how us as residents can speak the same language as the people that make the decisions about the traffic through our lovely neighborhood. So I would like to hear an answer about the extrapolation from the 44,000 as well, if you can. Thank you.
There's going to be more.
I think I'll just comment a little more on data. Actually, it enabled me to pull up the Regent, the results of the Regent study that Valerie had requested. It was done, like I said, back during the school year. The daily traffic volumes on Regent were 2,200, and the average speed was 43 kilometers per hour. The 85th percentile, so that is the speed at which 85% of the vehicles are driving under, 15% are driving over. That was 50 in one direction, 49 in the other. So it's more data. So we measure these when we get requests. We provide the data back to the requestor. But we're going to compile all of this. We'll probably gather some more for the study, and we'll compile it all and show it and share it in one of the early steps of the plan creation that I'm talking about. And so it'll all be sort of consolidated and available at that time.
Thank you. I know the people on Regent Street at Wellington will appreciate that, and there is a request for a forward stop there as well as the speed issue.
Hi, my name is Andrea. I've lived on the Victoria Street Speedway by Montessori. The Colburn Street Speedway, now I live on Richmond. I don't know why we did that, but we do. And we also have our business in Old North. So we've lived and worked in Old North for a long time, and I've lived in 3 different areas. And my question, I've been to many of these meetings, so I've seen that many times. He knows my name, MSA. It feels like generally city councillors lack political will to move some things forward. So I want to understand who is ultimately responsible to move. Like, we're all saying we want changes, this is how we want them done. Like, I've had the fortune to be in cities, every major city in Canada. You cannot go past a school in Calgary over 30 kilometers an hour, you will get a ticket, like every time. I don't know how they do it, but you always get a ticket. Great, I used to live in Calgary. I was driving down the 401 the other day, and I picked up Waterloo Radio. They're making their entire city speed limit 40 kilometers an hour. It was all over the radio. They're trying to, like, hey, don't be mad, right? They're trying to encourage their citizens to embrace that they're going to go slower. And so I'm in the medical field, so we talk about best practice, right? Best practice is to go slower, it's to have better engineering And we're like, how much do we need to save? Please make it slower. Please use best practice in engineering. And even for where the police are involved, like as a pedestrian, and mostly pedestrian and cyclist, the number of cars with tint that I think is not allowed. I can't make eye contact with drivers. Who is responsible for that and getting the tint off the car so that we can make eye contact and not like almost every week you should see me in my high-vis cycling stuff. Do you want to know the number of times someone says, oh, sorry, I didn't see you? I'm like, that wasn't my fault. So who is responsible ultimately if we don't have city council political will? Who is going to make these changes? And who are you accountable to? To us. Like, how are you going to tell us and report back and tell us what you're doing? Because you can feel the heat in here, right? I'm getting hotter as I'm talking. So we want these changes and we want them as fast as possible.
Just give it there.
Sorry, just for 1 second, just when you talked about the police part and the tint, that is becoming a major issue that we've actually started to address. We are going out to all the dealerships and to all the tint places to let them know, because a lot of the tint is far too dark. You cannot see inside. It's a major safety issue. We've done something with the Free Press the other day, putting it out there, what the rules are. We posted on our social media. We're trying to get ahead of that right now because it is such a major issue. So we agree with that. We're trying to work through that. Obviously, it's not something we're going to fix in a day, but it's something we're trying to get out there on social media. It's something that we are definitely out there patrolling. We've done a couple blitz this month alone, just dealing with tint and sort of modified vehicles. So we hear that that's an issue. We're trying to address it the best we can right now.
Hi, my name is Linda. I live at the corner of Grosvenor and Waterloo in Wendy's conversion. And we've heard an awful lot about data tonight, and some pretty compelling data, I have to say. But as Colin pointed out, the data is just an education piece. And education in terms of changing behavior is way down there. And as, again, Colin so appropriately said, what we need are the engineering controls. And we folks at the front are the people that can give us the engineering controls. And apparently you heard it 20 years ago. And he really needs to act. Now, I can tell you that maybe there will be some magical four-ways to disappear at St. James over. I do that. If you can't move fast enough. And it seems like 20 years is a bit too slow for this bird. The second point, I will throw you a volunteer and say the people that designed the speed hump at St. Michael's Church get full marks. That speed hump gets respect from anybody. Any other raised intersection? I'm not sure where the standardization is on the raised intersection, because the one at Ryerson is not as aggressive. The one at my corner, you can barely feel it and go over it. And I'm sure there are other examples. I'll say there's a lack of standardization on those raised intersections. I don't know where the plan got lost after the first one.
There is some talk here about the will of city council, so I feel I should take a point of personal privilege here. Technically speaking, even a stop sign, certainly a crossing, would be approved through a bylaw. So technically speaking, a councilor can put a bylaw on the table, but typically the way it works, is those recommendations would come from staff. And I guess I want to ask, in your time here, have there been any successful instances of a city councilor going straight to council with a change for going way before my time?
Yeah, I don't recall any. So recommendations do come from staff. The speed limits are the same. We had a debate maybe 5-6 years ago, and that's when the change to 40 kilometers per hour was directed by council. And so that's now the norm across the city, like in the residential neighborhoods between the arterial roads. And yeah, and there was a council debate at the time. There was debate between 30, 40, 50, and council's direction was 40. So that's a possible subject for our safe mobility action plan that's going to be looking citywide. And but yeah, it would be at the discretion of council.
Hi, my name is Carrie. I'm crashing the party from Old South. I think it's going to resonate though. I live on the corner of Duchess and Edward, and we have a two-way instead of a four-way stop. And 27 years ago, one of my neighbor's son was struck and suffered brain damage. It won't be in your record, Sergeant Anderson, because he didn't get killed. But the trauma that is experienced at these intersections multiple times a year, potentially every day, depending on how you define trauma, is significant, and it is not considered data. And that's a problem. I am a mixed method researcher of urban planning at the University of Waterloo, and I consider data to be both qualitative and quantitative, including for transportation. So everything that you've been saying tonight is data, and it will be recorded, at least by me. So as my colleague who is a transportation engineer and an urban planner told me, he said, Carrie, please work with the city. So Doug, I have been trying to work with the city. I have had a little bit of challenges with some of your colleagues, unfortunately, this summer. I've also seen the data, at least for our intersection, and the data are flawed. So what's happening is that they're coming out, in our case, on an rainy April day, 7 degrees. And of course, there's not a lot of pedestrians. There's not a lot of cyclists. So we have to be really cognizant about how we're collecting data. And I personally, right now, have an AI camera counter in my window collecting data. I currently have more data than the City of London has on my intersection. And I'd be happy to chat with any of you. We shouldn't have to go out and buy this. We pay taxes. We live in the local market. You shouldn't have to do this, but if you want help on how to count both qualitative and quantitative data, I'm available and I've got cards.
As an academic researcher, albeit retired in a different field, I really appreciate the discussion about qualitative data, because I think sometimes we do look at the quantitative data and we don't take into account people's feelings, affective state, how people feel in their homes when there's constantly screeching on the street, and the near misses that don't get counted in accident data. So I'm really going to be advocating for looking at qualitative data. I'm not so sure it would be a great idea for me to take a proposed bylaw to the city council. Some of you who follow city council more may have theories about how that will turn out. I did need to say that.
I just want to get, Don, can I have your commitment to also extend this planning to the Old South neighborhood and away to us, because I'd like to come up here.
Every neighborhood in this city.
Yeah, so starting with Old North, and like I said, there's going to be specific recommendations, but also potential policy changes. So we are going to scrutinize the all-way stop warrant, and that could apply to Old South, Old East Village, the other grid neighborhoods. So.
Does that have to go through city council, or do you make that decision and it'll happen, or does it have to get approved by city council?
No.
Okay, that's good.
My name is Chris. I live on Huron Street between William and Adelaide. I sort of think that we're kind of the gateway to Old North, which we should be slowing people down. I have a son with special needs. He's got an intellectual challenge. His best friend lived across the street from us for 20 years, always concerned about the speed of traffic. He survived through really learning how to watch out for speeding traffic, coming around the corner from William Street, roaring in off Adelaide Street. I've been advocating, and we've petitioned several times to get speed bumps on our street to slow people down. I thought it might be effective for other neighborhoods if people had to slow down coming into Old North. That's been, we've canvassed our whole street and around the corner, and like 99% people agreed with that. I thought speed bumps were the best option. I am understanding tonight that perhaps they're not as effective as I thought they would be, but thinking it seems we've got a really good cross-section of all of Old North. Just wondering what kind of investment would the city need to make to instigate and to create effective traffic calming through the whole neighborhood, including these four-way stops, speed bumps. Like, is that somehow prohibitive? We pay a lot of property tax in Old North. I don't understand why there's been some traffic calming put in that's not effective, like some raised intersections are better than others. I don't understand why the best practices are not being followed throughout. And when I've tried to interact with traffic, get a lot of people don't seem to want to hear from people. So we're hearing here, we've got a big group, hoping that we'll see some action from that.
There's been a lot of conversation about data. This is something that I'm plagued with when people ask me about how many patients I see in the hospital injured as a result of being a vulnerable road user who's had road violence inflicted on them. We don't have good quality data because nobody really chooses to measure it effectively. And one of the things that I think is a problem with data sometimes is that it can be used as a shield. When you hear that, well, the average speed was 44 and the 85th percentile was 50, that can sound like, oh, well, maybe it's not so bad. But everybody here is saying that's not acceptable. And so when you reflect on this, don't allow numbers to be what dictate, whether or not it's an effective measure that's being implemented, because the lived experience of everybody is what really matters. The number of near misses you have, the likelihood that you'll even go out the door. You're collecting data in Old South. You have no idea how to measure the people who choose not to go out the door to begin with. And that's some of the research that we've done at LHSC, is looking at people who want to arrive at work not by car, because cars are really expensive. They're really burdensome. It takes up a lot of space. It's hard for an institution like LHSC to house them all. And so the question is, how do we get people to come other ways, whether it's by transit or walking or riding a bike? And the number one reason that came out in our study was the quality of infrastructure to get to the hospital. You try to go down Baseline to get to Victoria, you are definitely taking your life in your hands. But yet that's the only way to really access the hospital. So these are the things to think about, is that numbers can only get us so far. It really relies on how you feel every single time you walk out the door, try to walk down the street, whether or not it's truly safe. And that is something that as you reflect going forward and choose how you want to lobby the city for the measures that you're looking for, I would encourage you to lobby Doug's office to have courage to do something new and innovative, like a circulation plan that's truly going to prioritize the lived experience of the human at the human scale, and not those who are in vehicles, because that is the only way we're actually going to see change. We can have some speed humps and some four-way stops, and that's going to help a little in one spot. But you need to find ways to change the volume of traffic coming through a neighborhood. You need to find ways to change the speed of that traffic, and that will drive the change in the type of that traffic. If you can create safer streets, you don't need dedicated bicycle infrastructure, because all the streets are bicycle infrastructure now. You don't have to lose your parking spaces to bike lanes or your boulevards to bike lanes, because they're all bike lanes. The whole street is a bike lane. Roads are safe places for kids to walk out into in the wrong spot now. It's not even safe to walk out in the right spot half the time now. So these are the things I want you to think about when you're trying to communicate with Doug's office, because they need your support. Because if they're going to be bold, they have to have more voices like yours than they do of all the people who aren't here, who want to be able to drive their car, who want the car to be the priority, who live in this neighborhood but travel a very long ways to get to work. But that's not your responsibility to bear that burden. It's not your responsibility to bear the harms, because you are the ones who bear the harm.
Hey, my name's Tay, and I'm here representing some of the parents in our neighborhood. So I brought my 3-year-old today, and like the next youngest member of Old North. And currently, my child, wife, dog, and me cross two-way intersections on St. James. So we live at St. James and not Waterloo, and William. Another example of a very ineffective raised crossing. People get confused, think that it's a 4-way stop. The number of near misses with like people not understanding how right-of-way works is outrageous. And in the next year, my child is going to be traveling across both of those streets, so across William and Maitland, and also by Colborne to get to any of the schools in our catchment area. So I know that this great master plan would be great. Whoops, sorry, we're a bit of a mess over here. Do I think that it's going to happen before she goes to school? No. But some 4-way stops in there would be great, because currently there are no crossing guards on either of those 2 streets that do not have crossing guard closer to my house. And not only that, our demographics in our neighborhood are changing. Old North has always had children, but we have a lot of people who are now moving out, and young families are taking in. We have a baby boom on our street, on just our section, that far section between William and Adelaide. We have 5 new babies on that section of street, and in the next 4 years, they're all going to be in elementary school. So could we please get some infrastructure temporarily there to make them safe through that walkway, because they all have to get to school somehow, and they're close enough to the schools, they don't qualify for busing.
Yes.
And we have a walkway.
I'm at a protest, and we all take a piece of furniture and put it on the road.
I'm at William and St. James.
Okay, thank you. I'll get you in a second. Andrea. Thank you.
Sorry, I want to speak on behalf of the 16 firefighters that are also part of this community that sit at Station 4. And so I had the opportunity to sit down with them and ask them about what happened at that corner, and ask them a few questions. One is there's a significant amount of near misses, screeching tires that occur there. They respond to a number of incidences there, so I understand from the community. But if I can ask one consideration, and that is stop sign, 4-way versus a stoplight. I can only speak from an emergency services perspective. Stoplights work better for us, and the reason for that is we can at least put in what we call an opticon system on, which we can actually flip that light to green to get those cars moving so that we can respond. So I said when I first spoke the first time that we're willing to accommodate whatever the community needs here, but if you have a preference from a fire department, a 4-way stop at that corner would work better from an emergency response perspective. So thank you.
Stop light. Okay, we're running out of time, and I want to do a couple of things at the end. I see a couple of people over here who have not spoken. If you can just make brief comments, I'm going to take the microphone back. But go ahead, let us know where you're from.
I'm Kendra Ryder. I live at Richmond Region. I am a community member. My husband grew up here, so I went to high school at Central, and I'm also an educator at Old North Public School. My 2 beautiful students are up there, and I see concerns on my street, Region, where Valerie Moretti has done the petition with a 2-way stop and after requesting a 4-way. The quietest part on Regent would be the Regent in Adelaide, where they have, you called it something, Colin?
Chicane.
A chicane. And I would love to see another chicane at Regent and Richmond. I think that would really slow things down. If a 4-way stop also comes in there, I think that would be a great idea. I think we have to talk about standards And the standards that the lovely lady said about Cheapside, I agree with you. I love that speed bump there. I slow down for it, and I have an SUV, and I am not going to go over that at any speed. I think standards have to be in there. Speed bumps, depending on the standards work. But I think the engineering has to be the first thing. As an educator, I also understand that education is extremely important, but it is time consuming and it's long. I will tell you right now that Blakely and Layton, they will be educated and well-versed from myself and their parents and from the neighborhood, but it will take that time to get there. So if we can get the engineering now, and we will continue with the education so that they are ready, I think that's where we have to go. Thank you so much for coming from Old South. I used to live there myself. I applaud you, and I'm so glad that you're here. I think as a kindergarten educator, I'm also very aware of data, but my children show me data in different ways. So we do anecdotal notes, we do observations, I take pictures, and I have communication with them. So when someone says to me that we do not have data, we all have data. We all see it, we all live it. My children at school, I'm concerned about. I think that's another standard that I want to talk about. Knollwood, on St. Michael's, also St. George's, they have speed cameras. They also have speed bumps, and they have crossing guards. I applaud all of that, and I would like to see that as a standard around all of our schools. Because Old North has asked and looked for something more, and all we got was a poorly, unstandardized, raised area at Victoria and Waterloo.
My name is Morgan, and I live at Waterloo and Victoria, and I'm a mom of two young kids, like a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old. I just want to echo again, like I think for me a big concern is that the traffic that comes through our neighborhood. So we walk to school, we go to before and after school programs, so we're walking before there's a crossing guard. And what I definitely see is a lot of traffic going really fast down Victoria in at like sort of 7:30 to 8 o'clock time. And it's really hard to teach my kids how to be safe in their community because traffic's so unpredictable. So like I've had the incidents where like I'm walking, I cross, and the car is shooting past me, and I'm like reaching behind to smack it. And my kids don't know, like, what if all of a sudden there was a squirrel? What if all of a sudden there was, like, they're just little, and it's hard to teach them because we just, like, they basically won't cross unless there's no cars anywhere that they can see, sort of thing. And that gets tricky because I want them to be independent, but I don't feel safe doing it right now, and it is their community.
Thank you very much. And I'm gonna take one or two more questions, and then I'm gonna wrap this up. And go ahead.
Hi, I'm another interloper from another neighborhood. My name is Sandra. I live in Oxford Park, which is just west of Blackfriars. So we are in a long-term middle of having every street in our neighborhood redone for water mains and sewers and all that kind of stuff. So if anybody's been through it, you know what a mess it is. Early on, during COVID, we, our community association worked together to talk about a lot of the ongoing speeding issues every neighborhood in every city has. And we approached Doug and we talked to the staff. We had a Zoom meeting, because it was those days. And we sent them a list of recommendations that we wanted. We wanted narrower streets, because narrower streets reduce speeding. We wanted tighter corners because they reduce speeding when you're turning the corners. We wanted pinch points. We wanted chicanes if they were necessary, but we weren't super keen on those. Anyways, a number of sort of things that are not well known in the general public. The general public, and that was me like 5 or 6 years ago, all we know about is speed bumps, because that's kind of the common language of speeding control. There are a lot of other things that can be done in terms of engineering and street design to help reduce speeding and manage the psychological aspect of all of us driving, because we all speed when we drive, because the roads are built to enable us to speed. So I encourage everyone here who is interested, obviously you're all interested in reducing speeding, to look up things like NACTO guidelines. NACTO is an acronym, it's the National Association of City transportation officials. It's all across North America. They produce a number of really outstanding urban design street guides. They also produced a report called City Limits, which recommends different speed limits and how to implement speed limits on city-wide and neighborhood-wide basis, and how to make them useful and really work well. Also, obviously, look to our friends in the Netherlands, because they've got it all figured out. Streets can be designed for everyone. And even people driving are at terrible risk for crashes and injuries. So it's not just those of us who are mostly walking and biking. And I encourage all of you to just use the word people instead of pedestrian or cyclist or driver. Because depending on the day, we all might be using a different mode of transportation. And the ideal is to make it safe for everyone to use whatever they need to do to get around our city. Thank you.
Okay, okay. I wanted to, you next.
Thanks. Hi, my name is Crail Scott Beret. Is this thing on? Can you hear me?
Put it near your mouth.
Keep it up to your mouth. Yes. Okay, I have lived in this neighborhood for 46 years. I live in the south end of Helmut. So when drivers are cutting off Oxford Street, they go by my house, and I see how fast they're driving. The question that I have, because I recognize that a lot of those drivers that are racing past my house are trying to get off the congestion on Oxford Street. And that has increased in the last 2 years because our city's bogged down with construction. Now, I understand that we have to do the construction, but a lot of the drivers that I see that are cutting through Old North, and I come into my neighborhood from many different directions, from Richmond, from Adelaide. I mean, I see it all. And I would like to have some indication of when the construction will slow down. I mean, it's understandable that when you are deadlocked in traffic, that if you see an out through a neighborhood that you imagine to be a thoroughfare to your destination, you're going to take it. So if the construction slows down, if we get our arteries moving a little faster or more efficiently, I think we'll see a slight reduction. And I say slight because the fact is our population has increased. The number of cars have increased. So I applaud all my neighbors for their questions and their points tonight, because you know, I've seen it happening in the neighborhood. I've seen the attempts the city has made in terms of signage and bike lanes, and it's good, although I must admit that I think we're a little overdone on the signage. However, I recognize that there has to be an approach to getting people to slow down. So when do we see an end in the construction on that might allow people leaving work and going to their home a clear drive to do so? Any ideas?
Yeah, that's nice.
Very quick. Even if we're done with the road construction, City Council is persistently approving development applications that come in, which we have to do. So even if we get past sort of the road changes, and you're going to see a lot of development application along the Oxford corridor. We've already seen some. So and every time there's a new development application, there's a question as to whether or not the cumulative effects of the traffic study of traffic impacts are looked at. In my view, they're not.
Right. Yeah.
More people, but no new roads.
No new transit.
No
That's
new
what we
roads.
need.
Well, more people, no new roads. It's not the problem's not going to solve itself.
So I see a gentleman here who has had his hand up. Do you want to say something on behalf of the students? Please?
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yes, well, my name is Omar. I'm here representing the University of Students Council of Western. I just wanted to thank you all for coming today and hearing your opinions. I guess the main concern that we hear from our students is safety, obviously getting to schools. You probably know that most students can't afford to buy a car. So most of our students bike, or the vast majority in this neighborhood will walk to school because, Lester's not too far from here. The main concerns that you all shared with us today of transit and being able to cross streets safely and having cars go too fast by people's homes in residential areas where there's a lot of pedestrians, we share those same constraints too. And I'd like to say that, for the students, we'd also like to see a lot of these improvements in traffic. Again, especially in this neighborhood, our students aren't really driving to get to school. They're just like the people that you're mentioning today, the pedestrians taking transit, the people riding their bikes. And we'd like to see some of those more active mobility options, the better increased transit, and the safer pathways for walking. So thank you.
I'm going to take one more, and then I'm going to wrap this up. We have to be up on 9, but 6 to 8 through what's that? Yeah. Thank you.
My name is Ken. I live on the Richmond Street bypass of Cheapside, St. George, St. James, and Talbot. 80% of the traffic coming through there does not come from Old North. I know when there's a train crossing the tracks. I know the number of cars parked on that street. And I applaud every one of you for bringing forward your concerns tonight. And I don't have a lot of answers. I can tell you of one minor success story I've had. In 5 years ago, at the corner of St. James and Talbot, a new development was approved. A 30-story building. As part of that approval, I was successful in getting council to include in their site development approval a 4-way stop sign at St. James and Talbot. The building was finished and occupied in December last year. No stop signs. When I asked about it, I was told I'll have to do another study. I reminded them the council already approved this development based on a 4-way stop sign going in. It went in today. The problem is going to be, we may have created another dilemma for cars coming along St. James, turning left onto Talbot, and seeing the green light at Oxford and Talbot, and race down there to get to it. We got to stop traffic coming through Old North.
Is there anybody who has not spoken who would like to briefly? Yes. Yes. Thank you. I have not spoken. Okay.
My name is Doug. I live at...
Put the microphone up.
Sorry? My name is Doug. I live at 776 Colburn, close to the fireball. I see the firemen have gone off to do something productive, for which I commend them. The fire people do not initiate a study when they get a call to a fire. They go and they fix it. It's lovely. I've heard lots of lovely chatter about planning. I wish you well with your plans. I hope some of them come to fruition. But in the meantime, we got a fire. We got a crisis at Colburn and St. James. Do not stop and plan about it. But a damn 4-way stop. reason that we have a problem in that area, intersection, is that traffic coming off the overstuffed super highway that they made out of Oxford, trying to get off there, they're angry as hell because those traffic conditions on the street are infuriating. They get off and they're in the mood to race, pedal to the metal. Half of them, a large number of them at least, think wrongly that they've got a 2-block stretch in which to vent their spleens before they get to a stop sign. There is a rather ineffective pedestrian-initiated warning light at Colburn and St. James now that only works for a few minutes when the pedestrian initiates it. Most of the time, it's not working. So that most of the time, drivers coming off Oxford in a rage, they have a 2-block shot. And when that temporary sign does get initiated, they're often not ready to stop in time. Let's fix the problem now.
Hi, my name is Yolanda, and I live on St. James near Maitland. And so close enough to Richmond, not Richmond, but close enough to Adelaide and Oxford that we hear all the car racing that's happening on the weekends. Now, I'm asleep. I wake up. But what really concerns me, it really concerns me when my kids were small, going to the schools, but now they're old enough to go further, to try to wander further away at night and coming home at night. And I worry about pedestrians and cyclists and people in the cars trying to get back into Old North to go home, having to cross, when the street racers. And I don't really know what's going on there because I only hear it and I'm half awake. But I don't even know if it's on, I don't know if it's on Oxford, I don't know if it's on Adelaide. Maybe it's both. Maybe it's everywhere, and I'd like to know what's being done about it because it seems like extraordinarily dangerous, the speeds that you were mentioning. There's no chance you can live with, if you got hit by one of those cars. So what is the city doing to stop racing in our streets? And can they put up speed cameras?
Maybe I'll talk about the cameras. So yeah, the city has implemented automated speed enforcement, also known as speed cameras. The provincial rules around those are such that they're limited to community safety zones, which and it's important that there's a policy approach to how those are identified because they're identified in the Highway Traffic Act. So the policy is the downtown is identified as a community safety zone, and then for the rest of the city, it's school zones. So that is where automated speed enforcement or speed cameras are installed. So it can be on a arterial, like a major road or a minor road.
I can speak to racing a bit. Obviously, that's an ongoing issue, especially in the summer months here. We have designated teams now going out to the different car rallies to go be present there, show that the police are there, so try to limit the racing. Obviously, we can't be everywhere throughout the city, and right now motorcycles are obviously another big issue. They're the ones that make the most noise, and I'm not saying they're the only ones speeding, but they are also speeding, and they're the ones causing some other issues. But of course, that's always a problem with the police for trying to stop motorcycles when they're speeding, whether or not they're going to stop, and it's not something we're going to pursue because of the risks to the community, things like that. But we are out there doing enforcement, This month specifically was about racing. I don't have the stats in front of me, but numerous vehicles were seized. It happens almost daily within our unit, is that we're taking a vehicle because people are speeding so significantly that they're double the speed limit or 40 kilometers over the speed limit, and we are seizing vehicles frequently. So we're trying to do whatever we can for enforcement, but obviously it's a big city, limited number of us, lots of motor vehicles out there. So we're doing what we can. We're also trying to educate by going to all those community events to talk to the people and show that we're there.
What do you want us to do? Like, how can we help? Because I'm pretty sure by a show of hands in this room, almost everybody would put their hand up to say, yeah, I can hear them and it's at an ungodly hour and we can't get a sense of the direction it's coming from. But man, it's the people who like to I don't know why they don't understand what a muffler is supposed to do, but they like to make the muffler make it louder. And so we can all hear it, but we don't know how to help you find them.
Well, I don't want you to go out doing your own investigations. I guess that's the main thing here. If you have video of something that you observe, so if there's cameras on houses or whatever, we've had that people have called in and said, this person is driving erratically in the neighborhood. They pulled into my driveway. I can be a witness. Here's the license plate of that. If we can prove different offenses, we don't have to be present to lay provincial offenses. So if you observe something, if you have video evidence, anything like that, that is always helpful. You can call in, you can email into the traffic division specifically to traffic sergeant at londonpolice.ca, and we can get some of the complaints that way. I don't want you to try to stop or do anything like that. I don't want you to get involved that way. I don't want to put anybody at risk here. Like, leave that to us. Obviously, if there's ongoing speeding issues, it is sometimes hard to tell where they're coming from, especially near major intersections, because it can echo so loud and it could be going different areas. But if you do have a common speeding time, place, if you send it in, we can try to do some additional enforcement in those areas.
Okay, excuse me, 1, 2, and then I want to give everybody on the panel just a moment to wrap up, and then I'll say something at the end. And thank you for your time. Please stay a few more minutes.
Yeah, just a quick question. My name's Chris. I live on St. James between William and Maitland. Every evening at rush hour, it's pretty predictable, this westward flow from Adelaide across through the neighborhood at high speed. A lot of near misses at William and St. James. I've seen people get T-boned there and had to run down. So I'm just wondering, are one-way streets ever, we haven't discussed one-way streets or partial one-way streets, but is it ever considered to say make St. James one-way heading east only from William? Because what's happening is people are coming down, they're cutting and coming down St. James because there's a red light on Adelaide. Would that just push flow up to Grosvenor or to another street, or would that cut that off? Because that seems to be a major thoroughfare.
Yeah, that's something we can consider in the plan. One-ways tend to be from a previous era because they contribute to higher speeds, but like localized locations could be appropriate. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if there was no entry from Adelaide coming that way, that would stop you. Because that's the only reason they make that cut. They end up on St. James, and maybe they're thinking of going down to Oxford on William, but now it's, and instead they just stay on St. James and they end up at Colborne. And that's where there's only a two-way stop. They think it's 4, they jump across, and then you're another street down there. So, it's very close.
Hi, I'm Arlene. I live on Colborne Street, just north of St. James. So we've been there 30 years. We have seen many accidents. We've seen many near misses. Saw one yesterday afternoon. Somebody crossing St. James going west, heard the brakes, heard the horn. Luckily it wasn't an accident. We are like your children. We walk our dog and we step back from the curb. We were T-boned at Oxford and Colborne And now we go very slowly through that intersection, as well as we do slow down at St. James and Colborne because we're not sure what the people on St. James are going to do. And we don't want to cause an accident, but we also don't want to be in another one. So I just think we do need the four-way stop, or we need the stoplight as the fire personnel asked for. And I think it's about time. After 30 years and several meetings, our patience is gone, but also our lifestyle has changed as we commute around our neighborhood for fear of being hit when we're walking our dog, and also in a vehicle, because we were hit in a vehicle. So just want to say, from a qualitative lived experience, I don't know how you get our stories. The police did not attend our car accident, so I don't know if we get in your data, and we were told it was because we weren't seriously injured, although my husband and I both had injuries, and because the person who was distracted and ran the red light had no signs of impairment. So I don't know how our experiences get into your data, but qualitatively, I think our story is important as well.
Qualitative stories are very important. That's why they're called stories. We're hearing a lot of very good storytelling here tonight that is not necessarily encapsulated in quantitative numbers, which can be crunched, and to which statistical measures can be applied, to which we could look at provincial books to see if the numbers are high enough. We have people here. Anyway, we are very fortunate to have a wonderful note taker here tonight. And if I may, did you want to say something?
Well, I don't know if I'm doing that well on the notes, but I will try to make it better at home. I'm Joanna. I was sort of part of that pedestrian walk on Colborne and St. James. I live near Duck, and I feel a bit responsible because I feel like we made it worse on that corner because of it. I agree with you. People don't see, the lights aren't very good. I think the one that was put in on Oxford Street, sort of in the middle there by, is it Maitland to cross over? That's a great one. Or William? Yeah, I think that's a good one. I grew up around there and we didn't have one. We need either an actual light for a crosswalk there or a four-way. We need something else. I think the crosswalk, I mean, we all thought it was going to be a great thing, but it is not working very well. I think that the speed that you were talking about with the data, like that's important, but there's two different issues. And the other issue is going from east to west on St. James, and that cars don't know what to do. They get to, so many times when there is a near miss, it's not because somebody's speeding through on Colborne, which does happen, that's a huge issue. But the other issue is that cars will stop, and then they will start again and turn left, as if they just, I don't know what they're thinking. Did they think that on the corner of their eyes that it's a stoplight? I don't know what they're thinking. But so that's two different things that we need to look at. Of course we have lots of suggestions. I'm wondering with the notes, after we get this all put together, Sam, if we could maybe post a link with it to a Google form or something that people could add more things, because I know that there's lots more that people want to add, and then you could collect the rest of the questions if you want to end the meeting.
We're seeing a lot of nods.
Okay, so we can do that, and then we'll post this after.
How many of you are on the Old
Yeah.
North Neighbours list on Facebook? Because it is a good source of, oftentimes it's a good source of information.
And sorry, one more thing. And I'm concentrating right now on Colborne and St. James because that is where I live and where my children cross. What can you, as a panel, or maybe the city, commit to before the school year starts this year? Because what crossing guard is going to want to come back and work on that corner now? That's coming.
Yeah, I've said to Councillor Trossow, and like, if the solution was guaranteed, I would do it tomorrow. But we need to study comparators. Like all-way stops, we know that the traffic on the main street tends to disregard them if the side street is very unbusy. And we have similar intersections in the city where I've been out with residents. They complain because of the drivers disregarding the stop on the busier street, and we get collisions at those locations too. So it's high on our priority list, but I can't say that, like, if we don't know what the solution is. If I did, I would do it tomorrow.
I'm going to ask no. Sorry. I'm going to ask the panelists for last word. If you've already had your last word, that's fine. Then I'm going to say a few last words. And as your counselor, I'm going to ask for some directions.
This is very heartening to see. This is something that I think about every single day. And first of all, Doug, thank you for coming out. I would not enjoy sitting with this group if it was a discussion about emergency department wait times. And so, and this is your job, and it's a tough one. So thank you for coming out. And then the next question for you is this plan you've got is going to have to be different than anything we see in this city now. And the first question would be, is that something your group is prepared to take on? The next question is, what is it going to take to support you from all of us here? How can we support your crew to find that courage to put in something unlike anything else that's in this city, that has a coordinated plan to reduce volumes and speeds below, this 85th percentile or the average of 40? That's not good enough because everybody here is telling you that. And I know that from the WHO data. We've got a latent safety threat in our neighborhood that is going to manifest more injuries and is very, likely to manifest as a mortality, in which we're going to be back here having this discussion again, saying, well, we knew about this and we didn't do anything. And so the big thing for me is that, we're doing the education. Mrs. Kreider is doing the education, I do the education, and we've highlighted the limitations of the enforcement. And what's left is engineering, and we need to do something that's going to force driver behaviors to change. And it has to be community-wide. It can't be one-offs, because everybody's got an intersection in a road that's a problem. And we've only heard from the people who made it out here tonight and who are on vacation. So I guess, the buck stops with your team now. And so how do we support you to get there? And how do we hold you accountable to make sure that the goals are met?
Yeah, so me and my team, we're committed to safety. It's the top priority, particularly on streets like this. We're not looking to move traffic. And so be vocal. You're right, I think earlier on you mentioned that not everybody's got the same priorities, right? And we get that, especially when if we change neighborhoods that have been in place and people have gotten used to, we can get a lot of resistance. And so we need as much support as we can get for when those recommendations are put forward and when they're implemented. So that's how we can be supported.
Doug, is there a way that we could have a representative beyond your team to make sure that we're listened to and we're heard? Like, I'm not going to say Dr. Evans should be the person, or my friend, I believe, was it Sally from Old South? Like, can we produce somebody for you from our community so that we can be, when you go to arbitration and you are with a union, you have two representatives, you have two tables. Can we present somebody to be able to be our voice? Because I'm not suggesting that your team isn't great. I don't know who you are.
That's my
And
job.
that's you?
That's my job.
Now, are you sitting at that table?
No, on a number of occasions. No, I'm not.
That's what I want. That's what I think we need.
Yeah, so community consultation will definitely be a part of it, and we can think about ways, there's different ways to approach that. There can be more focused interactions.
Let's hear from And then I want to say a few words.
Oh, good. I have this final comment to make, and I did make it again in my presentation of this idea that some of you may not think you need data, but I think you need data. You need objective data similar to what I presented here at Colborne and St. James. It was focused on the cycling lane, but you can look at the intersection as, what's happening with the vehicles. Not just that intersection, but others in Old North. I have limited resources, but I do have some resources. I was able to do that study for free a couple of years ago, and I can do another one and more at other locations in Old North if needed. So, but what you need, I think, is some good objective data, not just opinions of what you think is the problem, but you gather this data about whether traffic volume, speed, but other details so that you can find out what are the problems that you need to change. And so that's why, I'm just reiterating that good quality data is very helpful to you. I try to provide it where I can.
I'll just say, I wish I knew, Joanna, you were taking notes because I've been typing all night. So I've looked, that would really, that would help us. So I came here, my primary task was to listen, and I've been trying to keep track of everything that was said. So we want to make a plan that works for the neighborhood, and that's our goal, and this will be a start. But if you continue to record via Google Docs, whatever means, that would be, if we can get that would be great. Thanks. And thank you to all for showing up.
I just want to thank everybody for coming out. It was really great to hear everybody's different lived experiences, opinions of what's going on. Obviously, the London Police, we have a vision zero of no fatal accidents. We don't want any of these near misses. We're trying to implement plans that we can as well, working with the city. We're sitting on boards with the city to try to make the road safer. So we're here for you. We appreciate all your opinions, and we've been taking notes, and thanks for coming.
Well, this has been quite an event. This has been a very special meeting because I think that there was so much knowledge, and passion, and feeling in this room. And I wish there was a better measure for that. But I think we have made our point as a community. I need direction from you as your counselor. And I guess the dilemma I have is, should we continue to do petitions? Does it make sense for us to continue to get the 10 signatures on a petition?
That's a question for Doug. Like, does it make a difference?
Yeah, I think the plan, the intent is that this plan, developed with the consultation with the neighborhood, will respond to the concerns. So no need to do petitions.
Okay, so are we saying we're not doing any more petitions? But the ones that are pending, and you've heard the list. The most notable, of course, is St. James. Well, not going to say that because then the people on Regent will say, well, that's been in the queue a lot longer. Those will be dealt with, the ones that are already in the queue.
Yeah, like the petitions we have will inform the plan. So the intent is to address all the concerns in the neighborhood.
Up to now, my position has always been to advise residents from the street up to file petitions. I'm not going to do that anymore, because I think I've heard enough tonight to convince me that the city is going to be taking a more proactive approach. My question for you as your counselor is, what do you want me to do? Now, I have a couple of options here. Certainly as a counselor, I could put a bylaw on the table. And I want to make it very clear. I want to make this very clear. I want the four-way stops through the grid, especially at the intersections we've spoken to. I feel there's enough support in this community for me to go to council and say, I'm going to put a bylaw on the table for a four-way stop at St. James, Colborne, and some of the other places. Whether or not that gets enough support on council to pass is another question. So if I do that, you can't leave me stranded. If I do that, you really have to come out. And I have not taken that step because I've had the greatest amount of respect for the traffic department. But I am starting to feel that the community is ready to see things move quicker. Now, in closing, I want to say that since I started this little side job of mine, it's not a side job anymore because I'm retired from the university, but this has been the main issue that I get in Old North. This has been the main issue I get in Old North. And there have been some successes. Brendan here instituted a petition. May I call you out on this? Instituted a petition for the corner of Adelaide and Victoria. People were really excited when Churras Bakery went in. And that's been approved through the process. And that's been funded by City Council. And that is something that's coming up. The major study that's happening at the intersection of Aziz Western Road and Sarnia. It is in process. That's happening. That's happening. And I think the students have weighed in on that, and we'll be getting a report. We'll be getting a report back. Progress. There's going to be a crosswalk at the mosque, which is something that they very badly wanted. On Oxford Street. But the fact of the matter is Oxford Street and other parts of the city are developing. And they're developing much quicker than our transportation infrastructure is. And we've had some serious votes on City Council about whether this is a good idea. I'm usually on the losing side of those. But I try to make the argument that before we approve all this development, we should have a better sense of what the traffic implications of that are going to be. And it's not the staff's fault. And I'm going to be very frank here. This has not been a great council in terms of traffic safety. One of my colleagues in Hamilton Road came forward with, I thought, a very, very reasonable request a year ago. There was a death there. And I felt that the counter-reaction that came from some of my colleagues on council troubled me very much. And I supported Councilor McAllister on that. I am willing to go to City Council and put something on the table. I'd rather do it with a staff recommendation. And if I'm not going to get that, I need community support. And do you want me, if my assessment is that I think that's all I have to say before I dig myself in any deeper. But I really want to see these projects move along. Thank you, everybody, for coming. And as we're leaving, let's leave this room really neat. I didn't serve food, but I did. If you have a water bottle, please put it in the recycling. And don't worry about moving your chairs. Just straighten them up a little bit. Thank you.